Welcome back to the 7th section of my SwiftUI course. Today, we're going to learn how to play with data so that you can avoid as much as possible having a lot of functionalities, a lot of data within the styling and the layout code. In programming, you want to automate as much as possible. So for example, we copy and paste this menu 4 times, but we can just do so by using data and having that data elsewhere in another format, and then using a loop to do that as many times as the data permits. So let's start with the most basic form of data. We're gonna go right here before the body, and we're gonna put var menu items is equal to, and then square brackets, so that we can put an array. An array is a list of items. So double quotes, and we're gonna have my account, comma, double quotes again, billing, and then team, and then sign out. So now we have this list in an array, which is served as the most basic form of data, and we can just pass it to my components. So the data that we're gonna use is the text here. So we're gonna pass the text, and instead of putting my account manually right here, I'm just gonna delete this and call menu items, which is my array right here, and then I'm gonna call the index. So when you use index in programming, it always starts with 0 and not with 1. So 0 is equal to my account. And I can do the same for the rest, so copy and paste to replace these ones. This would be 1, 2, and then 3. So if I resume, you're gonna see no change. That means that it works. But at this point, you're gonna be like, man, usually my data is a lot more deep than that. I don't just have a title, I will also have an image, I will have a color, and so on. So this is where it gets a little bit more complex, but at the same time, in SwiftUI, it's a lot more manageable as well. The first thing is we're going to create our data model. And the data model is going to allow us to set the structure of our data. So I'm gonna go to the very bottom of the page, and then I'm going to declare my data model. So let's write struct, which is short for structure, menu, colon, identifiable, then curly braces. So identifiable is going to allow us to not only use the data, but also manipulate it later on. With identifiable, we're gonna need, at the very least, the var ID. And for this, you can always put var ID is equal to UUID parentheses. When you're looping your data, the ID is necessary. It's kind of like the key in React. So anytime that you're building a data model, you're gonna need var ID is equal to UUID parentheses as a default. And then let's go into the real structure of our data, what is unique about it. And in this case, we're gonna need the title, and it's going to be of type string. A string is basically a text. So as you can see here, up here, we're using strings, right? And so that's why we're setting the title as of type string. In the background, Swift is type safe. That's why we have access to all of these beautiful auto completions that really gives us these errors in real time, what is wrong, what is good. And later on down the road, as a developer, you're gonna want to have that in order to verify your data, to make sure that your app is not buggy. But essentially, type safe means that if you have a number and you want to change the number, well, the new value has to be a number as well. The same with string, the same with color, the same with all of these things. And Swift is gonna make sure that the match is good. Okay, so let's go to the icon, var icon, and this is also going to be a string. Super basic data model. Next, let's set our piece of data. Our piece of data is kind of what we have here, because we set these things manually, and it's kind of like part of the styling, and we don't want to repeat so much code, especially let's say you have 10 menus, you don't want to have those 10 menu rows here. It's going to be a pain. Instead, we're gonna set up these data elsewhere separately right here after the struct menu. So here we're gonna put let menu data is equal to square brackets, enter. And when you press enter, it's going to close the square brackets for you. And now we can use the data model for our data. So we're gonna call menu parentheses. And here you can already see the auto completion. You can either, put the ID with it, or you don't need to. We can just put the title and the icon. So I'm gonna select the second option like this. And now I can just enter my data. My title is going to be my account, and my icon is going to be the same as what I have right here. So person.crop.circle, I'm gonna replace that within double quotes. Just like the arrays that we set up earlier, we need to have a comma between each of those values. So now I'm gonna set the comma, and at this point I can just do the same, and then I can set the rest of my data. So from here I'm going to fast forward, and feel free to use your own data. So now I have my data, which is almost an exact copy of the data we set up earlier. So let me resume first to make sure that we don't have any error going on. And now at this point, we don't really need to repeat it 4 times anymore, so we can just keep the first one. So now I'm gonna put some spacing that you see what's going on. We only have the menu row, and that's it. So remember that this is a VStack. So anytime that we have a new row, it's just gonna stack one after another. So what I'm gonna do first is to make sure that I get the data. So I'm gonna go here and put var menu is equal to menu data. So now I'm calling the data that I stored right here. And I just need to use it. So I'm going to use a for each, which is going to allow me to loop through that data. So for each, and you can use the auto completion, parentheses. Inside the parentheses, we're gonna put menu, which is what we declared right here. And then curly braces, enter. After the curly brace, the first one, we're gonna put item in so that we can see each item individually, because menu is a collection of items, and item itself is just one individual item. So inside the for each, I'm just gonna cut and paste into here. So now I have for each, then my menu, which is a collection of items, and each item is going to allow me to get the value of the title and the icon. Now I just need to replace my values. So instead of image, it's gonna be item.icon. And instead of text, it's gonna be item.title. So we're gonna try again. And boom, we have our data, which is manipulated right here. So if someone else in my team, like a content manager or a designer, wants to change the data or the icon or the text, they can just change right here, and it's going to be reflected to the UI automatically. And that's really awesome and useful. So that's what I wanted to show you today. And I think this is something that usually scares a lot of people. And hopefully I made it friendly enough for anyone to come in and learn this stuff. Because I think once you know how to use data, it can really elevate your design and make your work so much more efficient. In the next session, I want to show you how to animate this menu, and also how to use some binding so that we can pass states to our components. I'll see you in the next session.